Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Live with NORML. I'm J.M. Padini, the Development Director at the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. It's Friday, July 11th, 2025. You know what that means, friends. We're going to talk about this week's cannabis policy and science news. Maybe catch up on some from last week as well. But let me know who you are and where you're watching from. And hey, do you have any burning questions? Because I'm here to answer those. Let's see who's here. Drop it. Real quick with the comments. Drop a note in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from. Instagram is broken today. For those of you who didn't know, if you are watching us on Instagram, maybe head over or trying to. Hey, Newfie Chick. I'm glad that I can see your comments. I can't see the stream on Instagram. We already knew that it was having issues today. But feel free to join us on YouTube if you're trying to watch us on Instagram and maybe it's not working. Hey, ETX in Longview, Texas. Thanks for joining us today. Hi, Ellie. Always good to see you here. Hey, Red Eye in Bristol. Hey, Michael in Wyoming. Hey, Carlorino in Italy. Thank you for joining us. That's exciting. And the rest will follow in Alabama. Hey, Thor in Connecticut. Ooh, so many of you all today. Look at that. Hey, Rosie, I see you. At least I can see that part of the stream's working now. Hey, Curtis in Georgia. I see your question. I like it. Hey, OG Grandma. Hey, Colorado, silent type. Hey, Alexander. Hey, Melissa. All right. Let's start with Curtis's question right off the bat. Curtis says, hey, from Georgia, is there a framework for at least decriminalization in Georgia? Statewide? I mean, like, could it happen? Yes, you could absolutely lobby your legislature to pass a statewide decriminalization law. Is that at the top of the list of lawmakers in Georgia? Probably not. But I would, if I were in Georgia, and let's be real, I'm in Virginia, so not that far off. The biggest opportunity, the most immediate opportunity for Georgia is to expand your medical cannabis program. If you didn't know, Virginia, Georgia, Texas, Utah all started with the same really limited, that's an understatement, but a really limited medical cannabis allowance. And all of the states have gone in different directions with it. Georgia is still struggling to get any product into patients' hands and has very limited access. Texas has done a really good job. Just recently, last month, we decided to tap them as the 40th qualifying medical cannabis state. It's adult use is legal here in Virginia, and Utah has a medical cannabis program, though their products leave much to be desired. So, Curtis, looking in my crystal ball, I think the most immediate space for progress in Georgia would be the medical cannabis program. But maybe you can get someone to advance a decrim measure. Maybe I think that Georgia, don't quote me on this, I think that you have the ability to pass local ordinances, but you probably know better, Curtis. Hey, Terrence. Good to see you. Oh, ETX. Hi, I like this, and I want to know more. I don't know about this tweet. I mean, admittedly, I don't spend any more time than I have to on Twitter, but gosh, I want to know about it now. What is Todd Harrison's post? No, I don't want it to be from NORML. Thanks. I just want to look it up. Tell me more. Tell me more. Oh, okay. I'm doing a little scroll to see. But if you want to tell me more, ETX, then maybe I can comment. I'm scrolling through to take a quick look. I don't know. I don't know. Tell me which one. There's a lot of comments on this. There's a lot. That guy has a lot of tweets. Joanna. Hey, first of all, thanks for joining us. Joanna says, hi, I'm from Massachusetts. I'm curious what other states' medical programs actually help financial hardship patients with medication. Good discount or actually helping them with that? That's a great question. I can tell you it's pretty limited when it comes to the compassionate use program offerings in Virginia, and it's by an individual company basis. You're usually going to see like discounts for Medicare, Medicaid, and veterans. I think there are other states that are doing a lot better job, and I think there are probably people. I think there are probably people in the comments who are in states who are gonna know more. Hey, ETX, what day was that? What day was that tweet on? Tell me so I can scroll to it and read it. There's a lot going on here. Chris, I am going to talk about Nebraska. That is at the top of my list. Alexander asks this question. Why do some states, like Connecticut dispensaries, not offer certain products like keef and hash that offer high THC pens? Connecticut. I know more about Connecticut than I ever wanted to know, because when Virginia's medical cannabis program was set up, it was originally under the Board of Pharmacy, and the executive director of Board of Pharmacy at that time was close to the Board of Pharmacy people in Connecticut, which was the regulator of their cannabis program at that time. So we have a lot of similarities, and my best guess is is that it's not permissible under your state laws. I would venture to guess that perhaps it's not permissible under your state code. I wouldn't know without looking, though. You can also just ask them. I can ask Rise. I'll ask Rise. How about that, Alexander? That's one I can. I'm actually, look at this. We're gonna write it down. Rise CT Keef. Got it. I'll find out, and it won't be next week, but in 2 weeks. We'll do a show in 2 weeks, and if I have an answer for you, I'll tell you then. Thanks for asking. But generally, companies are going to offer products, number one, that they're permitted to sell, and two, that there's a demand for. Melissa, I see your question. Let me take a quick look over here on Instagram and see what questions we've got. Hey, and the rest will follow. Comments this on Instagram. They say, my angle is to highlight the hypocrisy versus alcohol to get minds and laws to change. Okay. Sorry, just gonna lean over here real quick and grab this for you. I hope that you have read this book, Marijuana is Safer, So Why Are You Driving People to Drink? This is language that was used in Colorado when Colorado first legalized. It's not necessarily persuasive in every state, but it was persuasive at that time there. So there were some pretty good insights in there. NORML Deputy Director Paul Ramitano is one of the authors of Marijuana is Safer. You go on to say this, my ultimate goal is to have alcohol and cannabis on equal footing in Alabama and the nation. Thoughts? Separate but equal. I think it's a valid comparison. Obviously, it was a narrative that really worked when Colorado first legalized, and alcohol isn't scheduled. Alcohol is subject to federal regulations and state regulations as well. So I think it's a pretty fair comparison. All right. Alexander, based on what your comment about New York, that my suspicion is product allowance by code. Hey, Matt, I see your question. Matt on YouTube asks, what's the status of the push for national legalization? So for everyone who's curious about what national legalization means, it means removing marijuana from the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Like alcohol isn't on the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Removing marijuana entirely from the federal CSA, thus allowing states to set their own policies without threat of federal interference. That's what federal legalization looks like. What's the status? Not a priority of the current administration is how I would respond to that. Now, I will tell you, Matt, that on NORML's website, in our Take Action Center at norml.org, you're going to find it right at a button for it right at the top, or you can go to norml.org/act. The very top of the Take Action page, you will see an action alert that you can use right now. In fact, 25,414 constituent emails have been sent already using this action alert, which says, tell Trump to support legalization. So do that. I'm also going to say this for anyone doing this action alert. First of all, please do the action alert. Second, when you use either our platform, or it could be any other org's platform, and it's gonna automatically send emails to your federal lawmakers. So president, vice president, your U.S. senator, your U.S. members of Congress. Their own, the way these systems talk to each other, right? The Senate, the House, and the federal administration are all going to require you to pick a topic in order to send your email. It doesn't matter what you pick. It doesn't matter. Pick whatever you want. It does not matter. All that's really doing is choosing which staffer to send your email to. Who cares? If it goes to the wrong staffer, they're going to forward it to the correct person. Don't worry about which topic you pick. I know most of you have no problem using these action alerts because over 25,000 of you have done so, but every time we have federal action alerts, people email us and say, I can't pick the topic. You're doing it wrong. We don't have any control over that. That's your federal House, Senate, and administration. They get to pick their own topics. Hey, Brady. Brady, I don't have anything good to tell you about Georgia. It's Georgia. We talked about Georgia for like a hot second earlier. Oh, ETX, I love your question. ETX asks this, in my opinion, what is the roadblock for federal cannabis policy reform? Seems like we are close to the finish line for Schedule 3. Yeah, for schedule reclassification to 3. The number one roadblock is that Americans keep electing people who are terrible on cannabis policy. That's it. If you keep electing people who suck on cannabis policy, you're going to get terrible cannabis policies and no meaningful reform. That's the absolute biggest roadblock. Second, it's not a priority for the people you elect. Like, those things go hand in hand. If you, the current majority, there you go. That's as nonpartisan as I can say that. The current majority is an incredible roadblock. If they wanted to prioritize this, they could. If they wanted to restart the rescheduling process, they could. If they wanted to advance a measure through Congress that would remove marijuana from the Federal Controlled Substances Act, they could. Heck, if they wanted to advance States 2.0, which is a very watered down quasi, I don't like the language federal legalization, but quasi federal reform bill, they could do that. But they're not. You don't even see them talking about it. You did see some raids happening that were related to cannabis. So, that's about as close to the priorities I can find for this administration. Hey, Red Eye. Red Eye asks this question. Why is the state of Virginia not making any moves to take down the illicit market? I'm not going to call that adult sharing because adult sharing is legal in Virginia, and adult sharing in Virginia has very specific rules. So when people are selling weed to each other, that's not adult sharing. But I take your point. They call it that, but it's not that. It's selling weed. So Red Eye goes on to ask, goes on to say, there are several shops around me that have been open for years selling unregulated and untested products. Yep, that is problematic throughout the state of Virginia. I'm sure it's problematic in other states as well. In fact, I know it is. And really, it's the regulator. The regulator in Virginia for these retailers is supposed to be VDAX, Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. Now, we were able to give them some money. The state was able, not me, the state was able to give them some additional funding so they could hire more food inspectors, because that's what VDAX has, is food inspectors. These unregulated operators are otherwise subject to enforcement by local law enforcement. So I think it's a combination of VDAX maybe sends in a food inspector once a year, and local law enforcement, it's either not a priority or they don't know what the laws are. So that's my hot take on that. Hey, Kim in Rockingham, good to see you. Oh. Ma'ams, I'm interested in your question here. Ma'am says, I'm curious, when asked whether you prefer sativa or indica, you indicate they're not really different. I mean, they don't matter. Those names, they don't matter now. I mean, I get that people still use them to sort of generally refer to what that chemovar that type of cannabis, what the effects might be like, should be like, sort of categorizations of up or down. But it's not the 1990s anymore. But anyhow, Mams goes on to say, if labeling of regulated products is important, should lineage be allowed on the label? I mean, it can, because it's conveying to some consumers the sort of general idea of what that product is supposed to deliver. And some consumers understand this sort of cultural way of just talking about chemovars. So I don't care if it's on the package, but I think because it just generally says, you know, this is supposed to do something like this. But what's even more important is to put somewhere on or with the product in a font size that people can read what's actually in the product. And for inhalable products, that's going to be in a percentage-based format, and in ingestible products, that's going to be in a milligrams per serving based format. That's what I think matters. Thanks for asking, Mams, and welcome back. Yes, Brady. Elections have consequences. Thank you for reminding us all. Chris says, I'd be happy if DOT only tested for impairment instead of past use. I think most people would be satisfied with that sort of testing, Chris. You know, why would we want to resort to evidence-based policies when we can just be lazy and cling to reefer madness rhetoric of the past, right? Radhika, I see your comment, and you're not wrong. Yeah, Alexander. Yes, I'm going to answer your question. And Red Eye, you're welcome. Alexander asks, can NORML help lead some more grassroots campaign to try and incentivize the general public to push our elected officials more? And if our elected officials are too stubborn, are insurance companies more open to policy change? Was there something else about insurance that I missed earlier? But anyhow, to your earlier point, can we? Yes. And so there are two ways in which we do this literally every single day. First of all, there's the Take Action Center. I've just dropped that in the comments for you. Please note that there are fewer bills in the Take Action Center now, as most state legislatures have adjourned for the year. There are 31 bills that we're tracking in our Take Action Center today, but earlier in the year, when most state legislatures were in session, there were well over 100 bills that we had alerts on every single day. And then, Alexander, we have a voter guide, comprehensive voter guide. It's called Smoke the Vote. I know, you're surprised. It's at vote.norml.org. And so the elections matter. First of all, let's elect people who are good on cannabis policy. And then second, whoever is elected, let's tell them what we think on cannabis policy. And so we provide resources for anyone at the grassroots level to engage, electing people who matter, and then talking to whoever is elected, regardless of whether or not you voted for them or not. Thank you for your question. Hey, and the rest will follow on Instagram says, in medical states, why do we tolerate cannabis being sold in dispensaries only, whereas every other medication is sold in traditional pharmacies? Actually, in some states, like Connecticut and Virginia, I think Utah maybe also, or at least it started that way. Medical cannabis is sold in pharmacies. Technically, they just happen to only sell cannabis. I look, one day we should all be so fortunate as to have the luxury from choosing between pharmaceuticalized cannabinoids at CVS, Marlboro Greens at the big box stores, and craft cannabis at boutique dispensaries, right? And some states we are pretty close to that already. I don't know that I want to go buy cannabis at CVS, honestly. But yeah, I mean, there are cannabis medications available by prescription today. Newfie Chick asks, do I think Mike Tyson's friendship with Trump could help to persuade him? I don't know. But I did just see some AI photo of the two of them together. And I'm sure people think that's real, but it's not. That's not to say they've never been together. I'm just talking about this particular picture I saw in a tweet. I don't know. Look, I see the soft campaign on the Twitter where some people are trying to prop up Tyson and his sports friends organization as if they're leading on cannabis policy reform. I mean, welcome to cannabis, kids. NORML's been here since 1970, but I don't know if Mike Tyson is going to be particularly influential with the current administration. Perhaps he will. That's where you saw it on Twitter. Hilarious. You're welcome again, Alexander. Chris says, get more pro-cannabis candidates on both sides of the aisle. Yeah, please do that. Go do that. Absolutely. John, I am very aware of the raid in Ventura. Mm-hmm. Hey, Sonia, if you are looking for cannabis attorneys, you can find them on the NORML legal committee. It's at, let me grab the link for you real quick, but it's lawyers, plural, lawyers.norml.org. You can find a link to it also just straight from our website, norml.org. But the website is lawyers.norml.org, and you can click on the state that you're looking for attorneys in, and then message them directly through that page. Definitely say you are coming to them from the NORML website. Hey, Chris. Other Chris. I'm glad you made it. You're welcome, Sonia. Yeah, John. Okay, so there was a cannabis farm, and I mean farm because it was an outdoor grow in California that ICE raided. ICE said there were children working on the farm. Who knows? But that there were, not that they were working. ICE says that there were minors present. Were they? We don't know. We don't know. I've heard a lot about this. This is definitely an industry issue. We're not an industry organization. But rest assured, we're all watching that, just like you are, and talking about it a lot. Let's talk about some news, because I've got like 2 weeks of news to catch you up on, and I'm only going to do the state stuff because we have so much of it. One of them's not state, but I guess even that still is. Listen, you can catch up on all of the NORML news at norml.org. Please be sure to subscribe to NORML News of the Week and the NORML Weekend Weed Read, because then you'll just get these stories in your inbox every week. All right, let's go through these. Someone mentioned Nebraska earlier. Boy, I'm glad you did, because isn't that something? All right, so those of you who've been here for a minute might recall that Nebraska voters voted to have medical cannabis in their state. And the regulators in Nebraska decided that they don't care what the voters want. They just said, no, I think we know better. There seems to be a lot of that going around in 2025 America, which is pretty gross. So regulators in Nebraska enacted emergency rules that repeal patient access to cannabis flower. Nebraska voters voted for cannabis flower. Nebraska regulators said, no, I don't think so. We're not going to do that. The new rules, which were codified last week by Republican Governor Jim Pillen, shocking, I know, remain in place until September 28th, 2025. And they rescind the provisions in the state's voter-approved medical cannabis law that permits patients to possess up to 5 ounces of cannabis flower. Voters voted for patients to be able to legally possess 5 ounces of cannabis flower. And regulators and the governor said, nah, we're not going to do that. Right. Okay. Hey Ryan. Kevin, I understand that pain. Kevin says Alabama approved medical cannabis, and 4 years later, we're still waiting. Virginia approved adult use in 2021. It's 2025. Literally feeling your pain. Okay, let me make sure we caught up on those. Okay. Speaking of terrible things, I'm dropping the links to these stories in the chat. Sorry, Instagram, I can't do that for you because they don't do anything. But again, you can find all these on the NORML website. You're going to find them under the news section or on the front page. Also, all of these links will be in the comments of this show, which will be on NORML's YouTube, assuming everything's working fine today. Which makes me nervous. Okay, let's talk about Idaho. Here's something you didn't think I was going to say. But let's talk about Idaho. Okay, it's working. Idaho, arguably one of the worst, if not the worst, state on cannabis in America. Idaho, on July 1st, had mandatory minimums take effect for cannabis. In 2025, we're talking about mandatory minimums for marijuana. That's right. Under the new law, which took effect on July 1st, the mandatory minimum is a $300 fine. And you can also face up to a year in jail. So if you get caught with weed in Idaho, the minimum is $300. Maybe you're doing a year. Republican Governor Brad Little signed this legislation into law in February. Red Wing, I see your comment. Red Wing says, Mississippi, we approved it. They found a technical issue with it, put out their version, and have left the initiative process broken to block additional initiatives from appearing on the ballot. That is also a real favorite of conservative lawmakers right now. And I say that with my full chest. It is not partisan when I tell you who's doing something, it's just who's doing it. It's really a favorite of conservative lawmakers or legislatures right now to prevent voters from qualifying initiatives on the ballot. Ooh, okay. There we go. Sonia, I see your comment. Okay, let's do. They just keep getting worse and worse. I'm going through last week's stories first, just in case you were trying to keep track when these happened. Last week, Republican Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida signed Senate Bill 2514 into law that suspends medical cannabis registrations for patients and caregivers who have certain drug-related convictions on their records. Just so you're aware, NORML did generate hundreds of emails to lawmakers opposing these restrictions, arguing that patients should not lose access to their medicine based solely on a prior conviction. That didn't matter. DeSantis signed that into law. Neat. Oh, Chris, you don't even, yeah, I see that. Yep. Red Wing, you're welcome. Thanks for being here. Also, Red Wings. I don't know what yours is about. That's what it is for mine. Shoes. John, it's so funny. Just like that, Ryan says, how does the federal government hold a patent on medical cannabis while at the same time denying its benefits? It just does. Because America. Because putting people in jail for weed is really profitable. Wait, should I do all the bad news at once? We might be here for a minute. I will in fact do that. Texas. More bad news out of Texas, which none of you are not used to at this point. Dallas just halted the implementation of their voter-approved marijuana depenalization ordinance. There have been a number of lawsuits in Texas by Attorney General Ken Paxton trying to prevent localities from implementing their voter-approved depenalization ordinances, or to force others to repeal their previously implemented ordinances. Voter-approved ordinances. That's right. In Texas, voters vote to decriminalize cannabis, and then the Attorney General gets mad and sues your city. Okay, Texas elections have consequences. Exactly, Kevin. That's what we were talking about. Kevin says in Florida, you can't get access to medical cannabis if you're busted for meth, cocaine, or heroin. But old Ron said you can have all the opioids you want. Yeah, that was I hope you were here, Kevin, for the story we just talked about. Yeah. I'm scrolling for all right, this is the last one, and then this is the segue story where it's like part great and then part cringe. Hawaii. Let's go to Hawaii. where the governor had originally said there was a plan to veto this bill. That's not what happened, though. Hawaii's governor signed a medical cannabis expansion bill, which is good because it allows certifying practitioners to issue medical cannabis authorizations to any patient that they think might benefit from the use of medical cannabis. And it codifies the ability for patients to use telehealth for their medical cannabis certification appointments. Those two things, let doctors decide, and telehealth, those are great for medical cannabis programs. We love that. What we don't love is the other part of this bill, which permits the health department to inspect a patient's records without a warrant. That's weird. And that's a significant privacy concern. So some good, some bad in Hawaii. Let's move on to the things in states that aren't terrible. I keep scrolling through to make sure like I didn't skip something bad. Okay, good news. Good news in Ohio, at least for the time being. Finally, good news from Ohio. You might recall that lawmakers in Ohio, despite voters having voted to legalize adult use in Ohio, voters voted, the law is enacted, and suddenly legislators think they know better than the voters. And so legislators in Ohio have been trying all session, and honestly the session before as well, to roll back provisions in this voter-approved marijuana legalization law. But the good news part is that the lawmakers recently canceled a pair of votes on substitute versions of this terrible Senate Bill 56. There were numerous concerns raised by other legislators about the language of SB 56, and so they canceled the scheduled votes. To let you know, our action alert, NORML's action alert on SB 56 generated over 17,000 emails, constituent emails to lawmakers opposing SB 56. So I'm glad that some legislators raised numerous concerns, considering you received 17,000 emails from your constituents opposing what you're trying to do to your voter-approved marijuana legalization law in Ohio. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, I don't think you're typically getting 17,000 constituent emails on a bill. Oh, okay. I see you. I see you, Newfie chick. I see you. Yeah, Hawaii, some weird, some good, some bad. Chris asks a question about federal and says, any changes on Veterans Administration law letting VA doctors recommend medical cannabis? No, but we have an action alert for that, Chris, and I'm going to share it with you in the comments. 4,554 constituent emails have been sent using this action alert. Right, so this is going to go to senators, your U.S. senator. Members of the House of Representatives have approved key military budget legislation containing an amendment introduced by David Joyce and Brian Mast, both Republicans, to allow VA doctors to recommend medical cannabis to their patients in states where it is legal. And now we have to convince the Senate to do the same. You can do that by sending this action alert to your US Senator. Remember, it's going to force you to pick a topic, and we don't have any control over that. It doesn't matter what you pick anything. It literally doesn't matter. You could pick education, I don't care. It's just funneling your email to the right staffer. And if it's not the right staffer, they're going to send it to the person who's supposed to get it. So thank you for asking, Chris. That action alert is in our Take Action Center, and it's in the chat. And you can share it with everyone you know. Let's see what's next. All right, we talked about Ohio. Okay. For real, good news. For real, good news. I told you there was some. Delaware. Remember how Delaware legalized adult use? Well, regulators in Delaware did announce this week that adult use sales will begin next month. August 1st is when adult use retail sales are able to begin in Delaware finally. So initially, like in every state, everyone hold on, because it's not the first state to legalize marijuana. It's not the first state to do this. But just like every other state that's expanded from medical to adult use, sales will begin at existing dispensaries. So the medical dispensaries that are already there, they'll be able to sell cannabis beginning August 1st because they're already licensed. And because, let's remember, at the end of the day, cannabis legalization is not about who gets to make a buck first or next off the backs of consumers. That's not what legalization is for. Legalization doesn't exist without cannabis consumers. And so cannabis consumers should be able to go to the store and buy cannabis when cannabis is legal in that state. So good job, Delaware, telling those operators to get their conversion licenses and get sales ready for adults 21 and older. The regulators also added that they intend to begin licensing new applicants by summer's end. So great news out of Delaware. And then, okay, I have one that I'm going to save for the end, but we did have, these are two marijuana moment stories that I'm going to share with you. There was what day? Wednesday, there was a Cannabis Oversight Commission meeting. Now, we've had a Cannabis Oversight Commission. This is a legislative commission. We've had this commission before in Virginia, and the time that legislation had allowed for it to exist had expired. And so Delegate Krizak had a bill in this last session to reactivate, reform essentially the Cannabis Oversight Commission. It has some really long, ridiculous name this time, but it's the same thing. This is like this oversight commission functions like a regular committee would during session, except it happens in the interim. It happens when we're not in session. So we had the first one. Oh, hold on. I get to block some kook. Yay. Bye. Also, someone's shouting in the comments about George Soros. You know what? He's never given us $1, but we'll take his money. I mean, people can give us money. It doesn't change the way we advocate. I'll try again, clown. Okay. Virginia. So Cannabis Oversight Commission met Wednesday. Had some presentations by the Cannabis Control Authority. It's like, hey, here's where cannabis is in Virginia. Had a presentation by the Department of Legislative Services. It was like, hey, here's cannabis law in Virginia. So, and then had public comments. And people said things. It was fine. There were good questions asked, and the questions that people were asking were really helpful for the commissioners in thinking about what will be on the agenda in the next 2 meetings. The next one is August 20th. You can watch them. You can watch them on live stream. Hey, JT. Thanks for your donation. I appreciate it. Hey, Rico. Rico says, yes, hooray for Delaware. Now send some of that common sense to Virginia. Right, Rico? But again, listen, here's the thing about Virginia and so many other states. Elections have consequences. If you elect people who are terrible on cannabis policy, then you will get terrible cannabis policy. And that's exactly what Virginians have gotten for the last 4 years because they elected Glenn Youngkin. How'd that work out for your cannabis? I mean, if you're a drug dealer, I guess it worked out great. If you wanted to enter the legal cannabis market, it was not good. And I will tell you, Rico, what I said in this marijuana moment story. I said, the most important consideration for any Virginian interested in participating in the adult use market, either as a consumer or as a business, is their vote this November. If Virginians fail to elect a governor who has committed to signing an adult use retail measure, then they will not again have the opportunity to legalize sales until 2030. There are only 2 choices for governor this November in Virginia. One of them, Abigail Spanberger, has committed to signing an adult use retail measure. The other one is the current lieutenant governor, Winsome Earl Sears. She thinks cannabis makes you kill people and has said some really wild statements. So it's just that simple. It's just that simple. You're either electing a governor this November who's going to sign the bill, or you're electing someone who is going to push to repeal a number of provisions related to marijuana in Virginia. Whew. I didn't mean to shut that. Melissa says, so when this is all done and we pass a retail bill, we can say they had every opportunity to do it right for Virginia? Yeah, absolutely. Also, I think that is, I hear a lot of people saying, oh, we have to do it right. We have to do it right. And it's empty language. It doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything. Like, I understand your sentiment. What you mean is you want it done the way that you think is best. But we could use less hokey talking points, honestly. Like, no offense if someone told you, not you, Melissa, I know no one told you to use that language, but anyone listening who's been told that that's a great narrative, like, it's just empty. It's not specific. It's not policy specific. It's a nice sentiment, but right means something different to everyone. Hey, Keenan, news on Indiana. It's still a state. That's what I can tell you. I don't know what to make of that comment, and I'm wondering if I need to remove it. Okay. I think we're going to remove it. Whether you mean it to be rude or not, it's not. It's creepy. We did Virginia. I did all of those. All right. Oh, that's where we are. Okay. I have another marijuana moment story for you. Thanks to our friends at Marijuana Moment for covering these really important issues. And this one is about 50 years of marijuana decriminalization in California. That's right. 50 years ago on July 19th. Why do I think think it was July. I felt very strongly that it was July 19th, and I want to make sure that that's, oh, July 9th. I was close enough. On July 9th, advocates in California celebrated the golden anniversary of marijuana decriminalization in their state, noting that it was 50 years ago that then Governor Jerry Brown signed a bill into law that reduced the state's felony possession law down to a citable misdemeanor, punishable by a $100 fine and no jail time. This law did result in an 80% reduction in felony marijuana arrests and saved the state approximately $100 million per year in enforcement costs, as well as saving millions from criminal records over the years, according to one of our favorite chapters, California NORML. So congrats to California NORML on 50 years of marijuana decriminalization. California NORML was involved in the initial passage of the 1972 California Marijuana Initiative, CMI, which is described as the world's first ballot initiative to legalize the personal use and cultivation of marijuana. Just taking a couple. Oh, that's why I think it's July 19th. On July 19th, at the California State Fair in Sacramento, there will be a cannabis exhibit. The July 19th will feature interviews with Brownell and Aldrich, who were involved in this, as well as people who were impacted, justice impacted people from marijuana prohibition. All right. No, Keenan, nothing is going on for cannabis in Indiana at this point. I'm even looking at the map just in case. No, nothing's going on, but you do have Indiana NORML, which also celebrated their 50th anniversary last summer, I think. That's right, John. Hooray for California. Exactly. Hey, man called horse, thanks for joining us. And what do you mean about the tail end of the VA medical marijuana issue? Also, man called horse, you ask about the hemp loophole bills they're trying to pass. Can you be more specific? Do you mean the federal effort to close the so-called loopholes people think exist under the 2018 Agriculture Improvement Act? Let me know. John, I don't know. Yes. Okay. Well, there's what I can. Oof. I feel like Marijuana Moment had a good piece about that the other day. I'm just gonna take a quick peek. I did read something about it. I promise you. It's not fresh in my brain. McConnell made some comments. I'm gonna look and see if I can. Here we go. Here's one. There we go. Found it. I'm gonna drop. Ooh, I'm sorry you're watching on Instagram, and I can't give you this link. I will put it in the chat for anybody else who wants to read it. But you can find this on Marijuana Moment at marijuanamoment.net. The story was published yesterday. It's called Bipartisan Senators Agree to Delay Planned Federal Hemp Product Ban for 1 year. On Thursday, Senator Probst passed spending legislation that covers the next fiscal year and includes provisions that would significantly revise hemp laws. The bill, quote, closes the hemp loophole that has resulted in the proliferation of unregulated intoxicating hemp products being sold across the country, end quote. A committee, but this is how the committee summary describes it. Ahead of the panel vote, several sources told Marijuana Moment that Mitch McConnell, who championed the initial legislation in 2018 that legalized hemp, was behind this language, this new language. And okay, this hearing was on Thursday. Jeff Merkley said that he worries the new prohibition would be overbroad and impact even non-intoxicating products. I'm scrolling to get to the point. Yeah, it goes on to say McConnell appeared less interested in using the year to establish an alternative regulatory framework, saying that he's simply agreeing to give our farmers ample time to prepare for their future. I don't agree with Mitch McConnell on a whole lot, but his talking points are solid. He says the 2018 Farm Bill federally legalized hemp as an agricultural product. This language had an unintended consequence that has allowed for intoxicating hemp-derived synthetic products to be made and sold across our country. These intoxicating products have flooded the market in the absence, no regulatory structure, and often use deceptive and predatory marketing towards children with packaging and logos similar to existing food products such as Oreos, candy, gummies, and cereals, says McConnell. He goes on to say, the way I see it, the language I helped secure takes us back to the original intent of the 2018 Farm Bill and closes this loophole. Adding that previously, the legislation sought to create an agricultural hemp industry, not open the door to the sale of unregulated, intoxicating, lab-made, hemp-derived substances with no safety framework. You say it, Mitch. Preach. Yeah, read the story by Marijuana Moment. It's good. It's real good. Also, don't buy gross products sold by predatory retailers. Oh, thank you for that update on Norway, John. Man called Horst asks, is there any movement forward in letting the Veterans Affair certified? Right. Okay, so Man called Horst is asking about the Veterans Affairs. We just talked about this. There is an action alert for a bill that would allow VA doctors to recommend medical cannabis to their patients in states where medical cannabis is legal. The action alert, you can find it at the top of the page at norml.org/act. That's NORML.org/act. We just talked about this a second ago. Oh, there it is right here. 4,554 letters have been sent by constituents to their U.S. senators because there is language that would permit VA doctors to recommend medical cannabis in the House approved version. It's military budget legislation. So this language has been approved by the U.S. House of Representatives, but now the Senate would have to approve it. So Man called Horse, go to norml.org/act. send this, share it. I don't know about Norway, John, but that'd be fun. I'm just going to close all these tabs because what do I need them open for? Do we do them all? Oh, one last story for you, friends. Hey, Glenroy. Maybe they will. Okay, there was an analysis done by investigators in Colorado. So they're in Colorado. They're using Colorado products because that's how cannabis research typically works. You've got to use what's in your state in this type of analysis. And they were analyzing the products specifically. Now, this type of analysis is not new. There are other studies that have looked at what's in the package versus what's on the label. And this analysis is done by investigators affiliated with the University of Colorado at Boulder. They purchased 281 cannabis products that included flower, it included pre-rolls, and it included concentrate. And all of these products were purchased only from state licensed dispensaries in Colorado. All of these products were then independently lab tested for both THC and for CBD potency. And what should come as a shock to none of you, consistent with prior studies, THC potency was over-labeled in a significant percentage of the flower products. But by contrast, most of the concentrates, in fact, 96% of the concentrates were accurately labeled. So the study authors go on to say that they found THC potency labeling to be accurate within a plus or minus 15% for all tested cannabis concentrate products. Yikes! I mean, whereas 15% seems like a big swing. Whatever. Whereas flower products were more frequently did not meet this accuracy threshold. Both product types reported higher potency values on the label than what was observed. It just looks like it was much more prevalent in flower products. Anyhow, this study appears in Nature Scientific Reports, and you can find it on the NORML website in our news section, or you can get it delivered to your inbox tomorrow morning in NORML's Weekend Weed Read. Comes out about 9 a.m. Eastern time. Great way to start your morning. Yeah, Glenroy, exactly. Lab shopping is definitely a problem. Glenroy says this: what's in the package versus what's on the label is going to differ. THC potency is inflated. Some of the license holders actually pay a little bit more for them to get a tested potency higher. Yeah, that's lab shopping. It is a problem in the United States. It is a problem if whatever state you're in does not require, first of all, independent third-party analytical laboratory testing conducted by qualified scientists, by accredited laboratories that are subject to regulatory oversight. Like, if people be like, oh, I got a COA, that doesn't mean anything if it didn't come from a reputable, regulated lab. So if the laws for regulatory oversight for cannabis labs aren't good in your state, make them better, because at the end of the day, it's consumers who pay the price. Glenroy asks, what do I think about state testing by the regulatory agency? I don't think regulatory agencies are, I don't think about that. Independent, third-party, analytical laboratories. That's what I think. And nothing but that. I don't know why regulators would be testing products or what lab they would be using or why they would be spending taxpayer dollars to have a lab. Typically, a state has cannabis testing available at their forensics lab, but often that is limited to criminal investigations. Like here in Virginia, if it's a even here in Virginia, we still send for criminal cases. Product often still has to be sent. I shouldn't say product, cannabis, whatever it is, confiscated marijuanas still have to be sent to a lab in another state, Maryland, often have to be sent to Maryland to be tested because the Department of Forensic Services in Department of Forensic Science in Virginia doesn't have the capability to test every cannabis product that exists. Yeah, I don't. And again, Glenroy, I would say that advocate strongly. If that's something you see happening in a state, you have the power to advocate strongly against that. I want to make sure they didn't confiscate oregano bricks. I hope they can figure that out before it ever gets to their forensic science department. All right, friends. We're going to do this show again in 2 weeks, whatever that day is. I could pretend like I know, but I don't. The 25th, it looks like, yeah. Okay, let's plan to meet back here on the 25th of July. But before that, let me tell you about a big event that's coming up. Not this weekend, but next weekend. 1 week from today starts the National Cannabis Festival in Washington, D.C. at the RFK Festival grounds. July 18th and 19th. It's a 2-day event. If you want to go to NCF, buy your tickets now. Their events are known to sell out. And while you're there, be sure to check out the Advocacy Pavilion and hear some great talks by people who care deeply about this issue. There are a number of, what the hell is that? We're not doing that. There are a number of orgs that are going to be there talking about the work that they do surrounding cannabis policy, and they love your support. You can go see them at their booth. You can go hear their speakers in the different pavilions, and then there's going to be great music as well. Newfie, I don't know why he did that. Glenn Roy says, National Cannabis Festival. I wonder how many politicians will be enjoying the festivities. Listen, I can tell you this, that politicians absolutely do come to NCF because we ask them to speak. So I have introduced an elected official at NCF. As to whether or not they enjoy the scene, I couldn't tell you that, but adult use is legal in the district. And then, okay, I did drop that. It's nationalcannabisfestival.com. If you're watching on Instagram, you can find National Cannabis Festival on Instagram. Their website, though, nationalcannabisfestival.com. And we don't do that. We don't. Oh, thanks. I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to show your thing. I was trying to delete spam. Coming up in December 4 through 6 is the NORML Key West legal seminar. If you're an attorney and you need CLEs, we got you. Our CLEs, our seminars are fully accredited and approved in every state that requires CLEs for practicing attorneys. If you're not an attorney or you just don't need the CLEs, we still got you. We got you with a discounted rate. You can learn more at normal.org/Key West. but it is a fantastic cannabis policy seminar. Whether you're an attorney or not, you'll be able to meet legal experts from around the country that can help you with whatever is going on in your state, and collectively we can all work together as we move from marijuana prohibition to cannabis freedom. Thanks to everyone who has joined us on Instagram. Please hit that like and follow button before I wrap up. And if you're watching on Facebook, go ahead and do the same. Hit that like button. Make sure you're following NORML. If you're watching on YouTube, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me, huh? Should do that. Yeah. Glenroy, I hope not. I'm gonna show your comments. Glenroy says, I think a new strain called Orange 4547 will be released by Damn Santa's dispensaries. Well, you know, if Ron's smoking anything, it's that. We're not, no. All right, friends, this has been a blast. If you are just joining us, I'm sorry the show's over, but don't worry. Every episode of Live with NORML is available on our YouTube channel. Make sure wherever you're watching, you hit that like, follow, or subscribe button so you never miss when NORML goes live. We try to do this show every Friday around 4 o'clock Eastern, but we won't be doing it next week because I'm not available. This has been a blast. I love hanging out with you all on Fridays. You have the best questions. I hope you're satisfied with my answers. But if you have questions we weren't able to answer, you can always email us directly at normal@norml.org. Yep, that's a real email address. And yes, I will actually see it. Just send a message to normal@norml.org. And if you want me to answer it specifically, say, hey, JM, this is for you. And I'll get back to you. This has been fun. I'm J.M. Padini, the Development Director here at the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. And as always, I'll see you right back here next time. Bye-bye.